We wanted very much to visit one of the islands that we could see in the distance, but Ruth felt that it would be a nice experience to travel over the sea in one of the fine vessels that were close to the shore. But the difficulty arose, that is, it seemed as though it might arise, as to the boat. If, as I understood, these were privately owned, we should first have to become acquainted with one of the owners. Edwin, however, could see how Ruth was not longing to go upon the water, that she soon explained the exact position, to her unbounded joy. Let me read that again. Edwin, however, could see how Ruth was so longing to go upon the water that he soon explained the exact position, to her unbounded joy. It seems that one of these elegant boats belonged to a friend of his, but had it been otherwise, we should have found that we would be welcome to go aboard any one of them, introducing ourselves, if we wished to observe that formality, though it was unnecessary, to whomever we found on board. Had we not already received, wherever we went, that friendly reception and assurance that we were welcome? Then why should there be any departure in the case of the boats of the sea from the fundamental rule of hospitality that operates in the spirit world? Edwin drew our attention to a very beautiful yacht that was riding at anchor close to the shore. From where we were, she had all the appearance of having had much attention devoted to her. Our opinion was afterward confirmed. She was built on the most graceful lines, and the grand upward sweep of her bows held the promise of power and speed. She looked much the same as an earthly yacht, that is, externally. Edwin sent a message across to the owner, and in reply received an instantaneous invitation to us all. We therefore wasted no time, and we found ourselves upon the deck of this most handsome vessel, being greeted with great good cheer by our host, who immediately took us off to present us to his wife. She was very charming, and it was obvious to see that the two made a perfect couple. Our host could see that Ruth and I were both very keen to see over the boat, and knowing that from Edwin that we had not been long in spirit, he was so much more the pleased to do so. Our first observations at close hand showed us that many devices and fittings that are essential to earthly ships were here absent. That indispensable adjunct, an anchor, for instance. There being no winds, tides, or currents in spirit waters, an anchor becomes superfluous, though we were told that some boat owners have them merely as an ornament, and because they did not feel their vessels would be complete without them. There was unlimited space on deck, with a copious provision of very comfortable-looking chairs. Below deck were well-appointed salons and lounges. Ruth, I could see, was disappointed because she could see no evidence whatever of any motive power to drive the vessel, and she naturally concluded that the yacht was incapable of independent movement. I shared her disappointment, but Edwin had a merry twinkle in his eye, which ought to have told me that things were not always what they seemed to be in the spirit world. Our host had received our thoughts, and he immediately took us up into the wheelhouse. What was our astonishment when we saw that we were slowly and gently moving away from the shore. The others laughed merrily at our bewilderment, and we ran to the side to watch our progress through the water. There was no mistake about it. We were really on the move, and gathering speed as we went. We returned at once to the wheelhouse and demanded an instant explanation of this apparent wizardry. Our host told us that the power of thought is almost unlimited in the spirit world, and that the greater the power of any particular effort or concentration of thought, the greater the results. Our means of personal locomotion here is by thought, and we can apply that same means to what the earth world would call inanimate objects. Of course, in the spirit world, nothing is inanimate, and because of this, then our thoughts can have a direct influence upon all the countless things of which the world of spirit is composed. Ships are meant to float and move above the waters. They are animated by the living force that animates all things here. and if we wish to move them over the water, we have but to focus our thoughts in that direction, and with that intention, and our thoughts produce the desired result of movement. We could, if we wished, call upon our scientific friends to provide us with splendid machinery to supply the motive power, and they would be only too pleased to oblige us. But we should have to focus our thoughts upon the machinery to make it generate the necessary driving force. Why, then, go this long way around to produce the same result, when we can do so directly and just as efficiently? But it must not be concluded that anyone can move a boat through the water merely by thinking that he shall do so. It requires, like so many other things, the requisite knowledge, its application upon well-ordered lines, and practice in the art. A natural aptitude greatly helps in these matters, and our host told us that he mastered the subject in a very short time. Once the ability had been gained, it gives one, so he said, a most satisfying feeling of power rightly applied, and not only of power, but the power of thought, in a way that is not perhaps possible in some other ways. Perfect as the movement of ourselves can be through the realms, yet the movement of such a large object as a boat, simply and easily, magnifies the wonder of the whole of spirit life. Our host explained that this was only his point of view and was not to be taken as an axiom. His enthusiasm was increased by his enthusiasm for the water and the love of ships. We noticed that he guided the boat in the usual manner with a rudder operated by the wheel in the deck house. That, he said, was because he found it sufficient work to provide the movement of the boat. In time, if he wished, he could combine the two actions in one, but he much preferred to use the old method of steering by hand, as it gave him physical work to do, which was in itself such a pleasure. Once having given motion to the ship, he could forget about it until he wished to stop. And the mere wishing to stop, however suddenly or gradually, brought the vessel to a standstill. There was no fear of accidents. They do not, cannot exist in these realms. All the while our host was explaining these matters to Ruth and me, Edwin was busily engaged in conversation with our host's wife. Our speed had increased to a steady rate, and we were moving in the direction of one of the islands. The yacht was traveling through the sea with the most perfect steady motion. There was no vibration, naturally, from any machinery, but the very movement through the water could be perceptibly felt, while the sounds from the gentle waves as the boat cut along made loveliest musical notes in harmony as the many colors of disturbed water changed their tints and blends. We observed that in our wake the water quickly settled into its former state, leaving no appearance of our having passed through it. Our host handled his craft skillfully, and by increasing or diminishing its speed, could create, by the different degrees of movement of the water, the most striking alternations of color and musical sound, brilliant scintillations of the sea showing how alive it was. It responded to the boat's every movement as though they were in complete unison, as indeed they were.